The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Monday, the 23rd of February, 2026. We are live here at CHD TV. So this morning we're going to be talking about, Trump and his pesticide directive. We're then going to be talking about US military meals being contaminated. Then Karl Jablonowski is coming on for a CHD science update, which you are not going to want to miss. So for now, good morning, Zen. Thank you for being here so early.
Thank you so much, Polly. Thank you for your whole team. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Well, let's just look at this first headline because people, by the way, are very angry about this, as I think they should be. Trump directs USDA to make more glyphosate, signals liability protection for pesticides makers. Why then, in a million years, would President Trump do that?
Polly, this is outrageous. I mean, you know me, I'm an optimistic. I was hoping because Kennedy got into this administration that maybe glyphosate would be banned, as hundreds and hundreds of studies show that it should be. And yet, and not only was it not banned and is it not restricted, but Trump has stated that glyphosate is a national security asset and has directed the USDA to direct manufacturers such as Bayer to produce glyphosate in the United States, right? To mine for phosphorus and glyphosate herbicide components here in the United States. And this is primarily because I have to say, Moms Across America is the one that put out that 85.7% of all the glyphosate that is produced by Chinese-owned companies. So Trump did not like that. He does not, I'm sure he does not like China. He does not like that fact that we are so reliant on Chinese herbicides for our farming. So he is directing the glyphosate herbicides to be produced here in the United States. And as a business, when looking at it from a business perspective, when 80% of the GMOs that are produced in our country are genetically engineered to withstand glyphosate, and the fact that 85 to 95 to 100% of commodity crops such as corn, soy, sugar beets, canola are genetically modified, it's a massive portion of our agriculture industry. And from a business standpoint, I can understand how one would want to secure glyphosate for that business model. However, this is not a business model that is going to make America healthy again. There should be no investment in a continuation of this business model. And that's not just coming from me, the mother of children who have been harmed, severely harmed, and one who has passed from these toxic chemicals, involvement with these toxic chemicals, but also from the perspective of many farmers advisors that we have on our board and supporting our organization, that it is time now. It is way overdue time to move away from this GMO monocrop farming and to instead put spending into regenerative organic farming. And that's what needs to happen right now. That's what we expected to come out of this administration. Trump said the words pesticides in our food, childhood chronic illness, autism, obesity, cancer in the same sentence or a couple of sentences on a presidential platform, shaking Kennedy's hand and telling him to go wild and make America healthy again. And that's why so many mothers and others voted for him, because we thought he was going to do something about pesticides. And unfortunately, it has been a year and not a single restriction or ban has happened regarding pesticides out of this EPA. So we are extremely disappointed. I frankly was sick to my stomach, disgusted, and starting just now to start looking to what the silver lining might be for this. But I have to tell you, it's very, very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, we know that Kennedy knows the real dangers of glyphosate. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. There has to be something else going on. It makes no sense.
Yeah, Kennedy sued and was a part of a crackerjack legal team that got $269 million for Dwayne Lean Johnson back in, I believe it was 2017 or 18. And since then, there have been 200,000 people who have filed for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and glyphosate. It has been tried in court. I don't want to say dozens, but many, many times, right? And there are people who have won anywhere from the 269 million to 89 million to 60 million to $2 billion for a couple. So the science has been reviewed. It has been determined that glyphosate contributes to cancer, endocrine disruption, liver disease, kidney disease, thyroid disease. It contributes to autism, Polly. The mother rats that were exposed to glyphosate had male rats that had much higher indications of glyphosate. And we know that glyphosate is in vaccines, childhood vaccines. So we believe that the autism epidemic is happening in large part due to the toxic burden of our children, including glyphosate in vaccines and in our food supply. So to make America healthy again would require reducing and eliminating our children's exposure to toxic chemicals such as glyphosate, and in our food, in our vaccines, in our water, in our rain. And right now it looks like that's not happening. So we are extremely upset, extremely upset.
Zen, can you just break down exactly what it means? A lot of confusion out there about this liability protection and what it exactly was signed by President Trump.
Yeah, so what he signed was a liability protection for the corporations producing glyphosate, which would be under government contract. So what it looks like, according to the lawyers that I've discussed this with, is it's right out of the playbook of Agent Orange, which prevented, payouts for lawsuits for decades for the people who got harmed from Agent Orange. I mean, I'm talking 30, 40, 50, 60 years, right? That people actually got payments for the Vietnam vets that were sprayed by Agent Orange. For one of my friends whose brother received a payments, by the time he received payments, which was, I believe, 40 years later, all of his friends had died. Everybody in the Vietnam War that were harmed, they had all died. He was the last one, and he got something like $35,000. I mean, it was ridiculous. So although it is not a straight up failure to warn immunity, so that's why some people are saying that doesn't cause immunity, because they're thinking of in the way that, for instance, Section 453 in the Farm Bill can create immunity because it causes changes to the EPA labeling process. It doesn't do that. It doesn't cause any change to the EPA labeling process. It's simply an immunity for contractors who are sort of directed to make glyphosate under the government contract. So if somebody were to sue them to say, hey, you were making glyphosate, or you didn't make enough, or you made too much, or maybe there was some harm, they could say, well, we were directed to make it under the government, so it's not our fault. So they could argue, immunity from harm like they did with Agent Orange, and it could drag it on, but it doesn't give a direct immunity in that sense, right? It doesn't say that they are directly immune from those types of lawsuits, but it's arguable. So that's why it's so concerning.
So we know glyphosate causes cancer and can and does kill people.
Yes.
Extremely toxic, poisonous. Why then? Help me understand one last time. Why would President Trump and R. Kennedy be okay with this? Something more powerful has to be going on.
Yeah, I don't believe Kennedy is okay with this at all, but he needs to support his president. Loyalty is very important in this administration, and Kennedy wants to maintain his job and keep going with what he's doing. He has done more good in this administration than any administration has done ever before, right? We have made more headway in health, especially around vaccines and food dyes and other, food issues, than any administration has done in 4 to 8 years. So Kennedy absolutely needs to keep his job and keep going. And I understand why he is, making a statement to support Trump. I also understand that they have talked to over 100 farmers who are saying that they cannot continue business without glyphosate. And in some ways, they have a technical, validity to what they're saying, because 80% of these seeds are genetically engineered to withstand glyphosate. That's how they farm. However, they don't have to farm this way. It is a choice. farming practices are a choice. They do not have to farm this way. They could transition. There are other methodologies. It will take time. I understand that. It's not an overnight thing. But right now, Kennedy and Trump are choosing to support the farmers in the way that they are continuing to farm, which is GMO, monocrop, agrochemical farming. And that is extremely disappointing because at some point, someone has to have the courage to say, enough is enough. And if it's not the farmers, I believe it has to be the government because it's been proven that this type of farming not only harms humans and wildlife and, pets and babies and fish and endangered species, it kills the soil. And killing the soil microbes means preventing a long-term farming legacy. It just doesn't make long-term good business sense for the agriculture industry. So my hope is that because of the massive public outcry, it's been huge, right? My entire Instagram feed is filled now with glyphosate posts. This is, I've been working for this on 13 years. We've got the Daily Wire, the New York Times, CNN. I mean, everybody is covering this right now because it is so preposterous that any president would make a pesticide, which means herbicide, by the way, as well. It's that pesticide is the overall classification. But the fact that any president would make a pesticide a national security asset is so outrageous that I believe that the silver lining of this is that this is going to be for glyphosate what COVID mandates were for the vaccines. Suddenly it's going to go from not just a group of moms caring about this and maybe some environmentalists, but everybody, right? That's what happened with COVID vaccines, right? The mandates. All of a sudden, firefighters, police, the pilots, everybody started caring about these vaccine mandates, and it wasn't just a group of moms anymore. So that's the only good thing that I can see coming out of this is that public awareness is going to be so huge that this is going to have to turn around.
Right, Zen, so what can the people do? What can we do right now to support turning this around or support you, Mums Across America?
Right now, you can post and reshare and comment as much as possible about the harms of glyphosate. We are reposting videos, facts, memes, all these different stats. Get this information out about the harms of glyphosate because there's still some people saying that it doesn't cause cancer. They are still, 30 years behind in their understanding of what glyphosate does. And then as much as possible, get this to your elected officials. They have to be bombarded with how harmful glyphosate is in order to feel like they have any support in making changes and, changing their vote, especially for the farm bill that was supposed to be in markup right now. Your House representative on the House side are considering a farm bill that has clauses in it that are egregious for our state and local rights. And so, yes, we want you to call your members of Congress, call the switchboard, find your representative and call them. There are particular members of the House Ag Committee that we have identified on Moms Across America and, on X posts and Facebook posts and Instagram posts. So you can focus on those House Ag Committees. But if you just want to contact your House representative, it's very important to do because we do suspect this is going to get through the House Ag Committee, and then it'll go to the full floor. And all of the House members will vote on this. That's our best chance of killing it. And so we need everybody to contact their particular, their local, representative and tell them to vote no on the farm bill unless these particular sections, the pesticide immunity shields are stricken and taken out of it.
Zen, thank you for that. Very important. And we did have Meryl Nass on last week talking about this as well. Very important
Great
stuff.
Meryl Nass is brilliant. Yeah, she's got it down.
Yeah, she's fantastic. All right, so Zen, let's talk about military meals. People don't understand. So talk us through what the situation is and what's happening now. And then, of course, we'll bring Mandy on.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for addressing this issue. Children's Health Defense and Military Chapter partnered with us along with the Centner Academy, who we deeply appreciate, Layla and David Centner, to get, and of course, Moms Across America supporters, to get 40 military samples tested. We had 16 cafeterias or, like chow hall lunch samples from 6 different military bases that were sent in directly to a Health Research Institute laboratory, and then also 24 MREs or military ready meals also sent into the laboratory. And we did this primarily because back in 2014, I was invited to speak in China at a food safety conference. There were 13 speakers from 15 countries around the world, and I was one of them to speak on the harmful impacts of GMOs and toxic chemicals on our children's health. And after that talk, the general of the Chinese military came up to me in full regalia and said, "I want you to know that we do not feed our military GMOs." And then the two right hands of Putin were there. There were Russian representatives, and they said, "And we do not allow GMOs in our country." So for about 12 years now, I have been wanting to test military food we're not testing for GMOs because we know there's GMOs in there, but we're testing for the related toxins such as pesticides, heavy metals. We also tested for veterinary drugs and hormones in meat samples. We tested for mineral levels and of course glyphosate. And what we found was 95% were positive for glyphosate. As we discussed, that's a very harmful herbicide. And 100% were positive for pesticides. And it should be noted that 100% of those pesticides are 100% made in China. 65% of them are primarily or solely made in China. Some are made from about 30 something percent are made in other countries as well, but they're all made in China. And 70% of the samples contain 2 to 26 pesticides for a total of 62 different pesticides, which is the highest amount we have found in any of our food sampling compared to school lunches and fast food. We found 5 veterinary drugs and hormones that are banned in most countries or not approved for human use. 4 out of 5 of those are also produced in China. One of them is an aviary contraceptive, and one is definitely causes carcinogenic properties, DNA damaging. We found heavy metals in 100% of the food samples, some up to 17,000 times higher than what the EPA allows in drinking water. That was aluminum, which we're very concerned about possibly coming from cloud seeding. We found minerals that were actually 40 to 60% higher than school lunches, and that's because of synthetic fortification in the military food. And that's concerning because many people with MTHFR and other gene variants don't process synthetic fortification of minerals very well. And so we're concerned about that process. And then also PFOS was found 30 times higher than what the EPA allows in drinking water. So to sum it up, there were the military food is toxic. The samples that we tested anyway is toxic and very harmful, and it should not be what we are giving our, frontline defense of our country. They deserve better.
Yeah, they do. And what sterling work you're doing, Zen, but it's just, because obviously we're making a film about the military at the moment. I can't believe what the military goes through in every single angle. The way they are treated disgusts me. But let's bring on Mandy Feindt, because Mandy is active military right now. So welcome to the show, Mandy. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Thank you so much, Polly.
Well, thank you for being here. So you're no stranger to being poisoned by the military. Talk to us about it.
I'm not. Before I get started, two housekeeping things. So I am, as you mentioned, still active duty. So I just want to be clear that my views are my own and not the official views of the Department of War. And I also just want to say I met Zen 2 summers ago at a CHD conference for the first time. And, I was talking to her about Red Hill, and she said, "Well, when you're ready, I have something else to talk to you about." And she kind of, introduced this topic of poisons being in our food. And so, seeing all this stuff in the news right now, I can say, I am certainly not happy about these reports and these studies, but, I'm 0% surprised. Red Hill fundamentally changed the way that we think about exposures. And what the crisis taught us is that we knew about these issues long before they were ever talked about. And so I'm super grateful for Zen and for moms across America for bringing this to the forefront, because transparency is the way that we save lives. Delayed acknowledgement is not. Transparency is how we protect people, and delayed acknowledgement is not how we do that. And so, as a mom of 2 small children who were impacted at Red Hill during the water crisis in 2021, we have been to over 800 medical appointments at this time, and it's just been really hard to go through and learning what we've learned over the past several years, knowing that the military, certainly did know about these risks. And quite honestly, at this stage in my career, I'm a little bit over, the military, our force, uh, sort of being treated like lab rats or test dummies. And I feel like that's sort of the position that we've been put in, here at Red Hill with our water, and now to hear, learn about it with our food as well. Um, it's alarming for sure.
So, both of you, for those, and this is got a harsh question, but it's the reality of life. When people say, I don't really care, I'm not in the military, why should I care if their food is toxic? Bring your own food in, don't care. What do we say? Why should they care? Well, that's the question back at you.
Well, first and foremost, we talk a great deal about being this mission ready and in lethal force. We can't be mission ready. We can't be deployable and lethal if we are poisoning our people. People should care because we invest, an enormous amount of funds into the military. We do a great job with, funds for training and equipment, but nutrition certainly, is tied to readiness. And if we are not fueling our frontline leaders with good nutrition, then we're not going to be able to rely on them.
Yeah, and can I add, Polly, that the nutrition's was higher in this food than school lunches, which shows an attempt to fortify, right? Which is what we were looking for. We were looking for, is this food military grade? Military grade to us means the highest, best quality. So they did make an attempt to do that with the nutrition. However, as I mentioned earlier, synthetic fortification can be very problematic for certain individuals. 40 to 60% of the population has an MTHFR gene or other gene variants which impair the body's ability to detox. And so those people, like, for instance, children with autism, are going to have a very hard time with the tortillas in California that Governor Newsom is saying must be fortified with folic acid. That's going to be extremely problematic for them. So that type of nutrition, that type of fortification in the military food is problematic for a certain percentage of the military, and we're just afraid that they don't know about that. Also, we have to be ensuring that our military gets non-toxic food, because if you have toxins in the food, in many cases that will bind or prevent the absorption of the nutrients. I'm not a nutritionist, but the having toxins in your body, your liver getting gunked up and not operating properly, means that your whole body is not going to function as well. You're going to be more likely to have depression. You're going to be more likely to have insomnia and inability to react in a way that we expect our military to react. So the fact is that we need non-toxic, nutrient-dense food for our military. And we did a preliminary assessment using AI, which is not perfect. So we're just putting this out there, for other experts to assess. But the preliminary assessment, when we directed it to look at DoD contracts, USDA transition support that's been given to farmers to transition to regenerative and organic farming, and it said that over a 5-year period, if our government, through the DoD, the military budget, supported the transition to regenerative organic farming, right, transitioning farmers over a 5-year period, and procuring regenerative organic food for our military, it would cost less than 1% of the military budget. And it would cost less than 2% of the military budget if we included our school lunches as a matter of homeland security. So we believe that is a fair number of the budget, if that is in case what it would actually cost. And we think that's a worthy investment. Now, we are happy to hear that Chef Irvine is working with the USDA and the DoD. Kennedy and Secretary Brooke Rollins announced this, I believe it was last week in Washington, D.C. It feels like it was a year ago now. But they did announce that that Chef Irvine is working with 2 military bases now, and within the next 2 months, they will be rolling out a real food program in 20 military bases. And I'm very, very happy about this. And we want to make sure that the food that the military is getting is organic, because otherwise they're still getting these toxic pesticides. That's where we need to go with this program.
Right, and that's very exciting. I mean, quite frankly, to the people out there who say that, why should I care? You should care, because you sleep well in your bed at night because of these people. And because we're making this documentary at the moment, I've met so many military members, and I can tell you these people are strong, fit, love their country, want to protect you. So why, in the name of Jesus, are we poisoning these people?
Yeah, they should have military grade food just like they have military grade weapons. They should have, in my opinion, Wagyu beer massaged beef, right? They should have the farmers who supply their food should be the premium contractors getting paid high level amounts to give them the highest quality food. They should have the steaks and regeneratively raised American steak grown from American land. They should have American vegetables and fruits, and it should be the safest, most secure, most nutrient dense. It should not be the slop that we're looking at right now. This is probably meat that's been processed or imported from another country. That's what we found. Veterinary drugs and hormones that were banned in the US, Canada, and Europe. Banned veterinary drugs and hormones in the military food. So that means they're either being illegally used, or that meat is coming from Africa or China or South America, some other country. And we don't think that makes good sense for a national security program to be importing food in that way, and to not have a secure not have the regulation needed to make sure that that food is safe and secure. So we need to move to, just imagine though, Paul, imagine American farmers getting up in the morning and growing food instead of for Asia, for their seed oils and their fuel and their livestock feed. They're getting up in the morning and they're growing food for the American military, for our soldiers and our students. I think that is a future that most farmers would love to live into, would be excited about, and would be willing to make the difficult transition from GMO monocrop farming to regenerative organic ag. I think they would be proud to do that. I know I would be very proud if one of my sons wanted to be a farmer and to grow food for the military and for our U.S. students. That would be one of the best futures you could possibly imagine for our young people today. And I hope more and more farmers take that on.
Yeah,
Then if I may too, I appreciate you mentioning the school lunch piece as well. Obviously, our service members rely on this food every day. It's in our dining facilities. It's in our, the MREs that they are supplied in a training environment or well downrange. But, since this is a CHD talk, our kids, like my kids, for example, they're 5 and 8. They have been in military child development centers their entire life up until the age of 5. And now they're both, at an on-base elementary school. They are also being supplied, this food by the military. And what I think about from a military perspective is growing the next generation. And how is it that we are going to have a next generation, whether in serving in the military, whether there's the institutional betrayal of being poisoned or the long-term health effects of, being supplied this food. And so I think it's, I appreciate the work that you're doing both for, our military service members, the food that we're getting, but also thinking about, what's being provided in these school lunches as well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I just want to add that we also have had solutions come to us, which I'm excited about. I don't get paid anything for this, but there's this company that has organic MREs, and they're called Essential Provisions. And look at their tagline. It says, "To be the best, eat the best," right? Mm-hmm. And these are regenerative, organic, military rations. This is bison chili, and with them came to me a organization called Hinterland Institute, who supports veterans to become ranchers. So there's 300,000 veterans that need jobs. And if the government freed up some more grazing land, there's some land that is being discussed that could be, added on to ranchers and they could graze. We could have American ranchers that are veterans raising bison and cattle to provide meat to the military. There are people with solutions that are coming to Moms Across America, and we are happy to share on our website, momsacrossamerica.org. We also have farming solutions on our website under action called Feed Your Soil, that farmers can take a look at: how to get glyphosate out of your soil within 6 months with Paleo Power, how to boost your crop yields with Harvest Harmonics, how to get weeds out of your fields with Greenfield Robotics, robotics, lasers and electric, to get weeds out, non-toxic weeding with robotics. There are a lot of solutions that farmers can use right now. And we hope that people will go to our website and to share those.
Zen, thank you for all the work you're doing, and Mandy for speaking out the way you are. I just want to just close on one thing that's actually really sad. Of all the military members that we've interviewed, not one of them said that they would recommend their children went into the military as it stands now, and which
Oh,
was
God.
heartbreaking for them because they love the military, but with all the poison coming from every single angles, that is not a career they want for their children.
Yeah.
So I think we have a big problem ahead unless we get this change.
Mandy, can I ask, has there been any feedback from military members beyond yourself about these test results and any changes that they see? Like, are there nutrition directors saying, hey, we're going to make some changes? Is there any feedback from the military that you can see?
Honestly, not yet. The only thing that I have really gotten on this is from being, part of CHD, the military chapter, and from what I see in the news coming, and from organizations like Mom Across America, which is heartbreaking because again, with Red Hill, we learned that, you know, transparency is what prevents a lot of this, and so it's concerning to me that we aren't just yet. But we're certainly trying to push that information through our spouses groups on base and stuff like that. But officially coming through the military, no, not yet.
Okay, well, we'll see. As we say at Moms Across America, and Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. And I think that's a primary also focus in the military, right? They're always trying to improve, always trying to do better. Performance, perspective, commitment, mindset. So I hope that these results support the military in having better quality food for our troops. And I thank you for your service. My father was a World War II veteran. My ex-husband was a veteran. My son wanted to go into the military, but the vaccines prevented him from doing that. So I'm very, very sad that he lost his sense of purpose and was not able to fulfill that. But
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, both of you, so much. And Zen, please do keep us updated. Come back and as things happen and tell the people what we can do to make this happen, the good things happen.
Absolutely. Join momsacrossamerica.org. We have Monday Night Moms Connect calls, and we send out newsletters with calls to action to make sure that you are contacting your representatives and senators, especially about this pesticide immunity shield. Please keep up to date and sign up for our newsletter. And thank you, Mandy. Thank you, Polly. Thank you,
Thank you,
team.
both of you. Thank you so much for being on this morning. All right, everyone, we're going to go over to Karl Jablonowski from the Science Department at Children's Health Defense. Good morning, Karl.
Good morning, Polly.
Well, that was an interesting opening. But let's go to the science. Talk us through what's the latest this week.
Sure. So this science department, we criticize a lot, and that's an essential part of scientific discourse. But we're not only about criticizing others, we also do our own good science and weather our own critics. So we have just published a review article that demonstrates how aluminum adjuvants can cause autism. Now, cause is a strong word that I don't use too often because most of my work focuses or is limited to associations, which could be, but is not necessarily causal. Causal is a high bar. To actually say that one thing causes another, you need a lot to back that up. And the 9 principles of the Bradford-Hill criteria is that high bar. We are saying aluminum adjuvants can cause autism, satisfying all 9 Bradford-Hill criteria. We lay out the map of how aluminum adjuvants, which is a primary ingredient in many vaccines, mechanistically and neuropathologically cause inflammation. Now, when given to a child of a sensitive age, can alter synaptic pruning, which is an essential part of brain development, ultimately changes the brain architecture, manifesting as autism. This isn't just our opinion. This is a review article. We connect the dots between hundreds of published studies. For decades, based on bad science, the chant was aluminum cannot cause autism. We show that it can, and anyone who wants to continue that chant in respectable scientific discourse is going to have to justify how we are wrong. Other science projects we have going on, we have an ongoing clinical informatics project, which is based on data derived from joint agreements with 8 different pediatric practices. we've amassed medical records of about 4,000 unvaccinated children whom we're able to track for many years. We also have a large sample size of vaccinated children covering the same time period in the same practices. In a few months' time, we hope to have our first manuscript, which describes the differences between those two children cohorts. We're actually doing the science that should have been done, but never had been. The science that needs to back any attestation of safety, but it never did. It's the science that needs to be incontrovertible before a recommendation, but it never was. And in the spirit of calling out bad science where it lies, doctors Middledorf and Hooker and myself just published a critique of one of the misinformation engines. Now, I pay attention to three misinformation engines, which are the people who see harm and dress it up as safety. One of them is the most recent pairing between the ironically named Vaccine Integrity Project and Rochelle Walensky. The other one is Anders Havid and most of the papers he touches. He's the one who published, MMR does not cause autism, but his data really strongly suggested that it did. He's also the one who published the 1.2 million Danish study claiming that aluminum adjuvants don't cause autism, even though his own data says that it does. The third misinformation engine that I pay attention to is a cluster of scientists from the British Heart Foundation, and the universities of Cambridge, Bristol, and Oxford, along with Health Data Research UK. Now, in our recent publication, we critique the sixth publication out of this cluster, which was published in Lancet Child and Adolescent Health. They acknowledge a risk of myocarditis following vaccination from Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. And they state that the risk following vaccination is substantially lower than the risk following infection. Note, following vaccination and following infection, they are specifically not addressing if vaccinated or unvaccinated children have a greater risk of myocarditis. These authors had data to answer that very question in hand. It is the first question they would have asked of that data, and I'm not naive enough to believe that the 22 authors of this paper didn't ask it, but instead they chose to convolute it, assuming a swab test was definitive, which we know from Germany in a Frontiers study that only 1 in 7 PCR tests were actually infected. But even with this horribly contrived study, if you looked at supplementary table 16, the absolute excess risk for myocarditis following vaccination was 8.5 per million. Contemporaneous to that, the risk following infection was 4.5 per million. So the risk from the vaccine is almost twice as large, which strongly contradicts the statement of a lower risk. Now, the last topic I wanted to address, you'll have to entertain the following, and it's absurd, but we are living in absurd times. In 1912, in the middle of the Atlantic, the Titanic sank, and over 1,500 people died. Now, the cause of death would likely have been drowning, or hypothermia, or trauma, except if they had measles. Then they died of measles. That probably doesn't sit well in your reality. How about this one? In 1999, the Institute of Medicine issued a report that as many as 98,000 people a year die from medical errors that occur in hospitals. In 2016, Martin Macri, who's currently the FDA commissioner, published in the BMJ Medical Error, the third leading cause of death in the US, and calculated that the mean rate of death from medical error was over 250,000 per year. Now, in 2023, the BMJ Quality and Safety published burden of serious harms from diagnostic errors in the USA, wherein they described 371,000 total deaths per year from diagnostic errors alone. That is the death toll of medical error, which is our metaphoric Titanic sinking. In that context, 2 measles cases. One child had a pneumonia with a secondary bacterial infection, which is easily treatable and easily survivable, but she was given an inappropriate antibiotic, a medical error. It worsened over days. In her critical demise, they discovered it was the wrong antibiotic. And when every second counted, it took them 10 hours to give her the right antibiotic. Now, the medical team fills out the death certificate. They have 4 slots for cause of death, no mention of the wrong antibiotics. The other child, doctors assumed was measles pneumonia. In fact, it was hospital-acquired pneumonia, E. coli, antibiotic resistant, heavy growth. Again, wrong antibiotics were given. There's no mention of heavy growth of an antibiotic resistant E. coli on the death certificate, which again is filled out by the doctors who presided over her death. When the unchecked bacterial infection in her lungs was so severe, her blood oxygen fell. They intubated her. When they put the tube into her lungs and pushed the air in, they set the pressure too high and blew out her lungs. There was a hole in her lungs. One of the 4 slots for cause of death on her death certificate was measles lung injury, which I think is an awful misrepresentation. Now, the wrong antibiotics is not just a missed opportunity to treat. We all live in symbiosis with other bacteria, estimated to number about 40 trillion in each human. All bacteria is in constant competition with other bacteria. Giving the wrong antibiotic means that you're not only missing the opportunity to treat, which is to kill the bug you want to kill, but you're decimating its competition, giving the dangerous bacteria unfettered resources to grow. Now, the chain of events thereafter is formulaic. The hospital that just inflicted bad practice of medicine reports them as measles deaths to the state. The state relays that to the CDC. The CDC distributes that to the news outlets, and the politicians line up for their sound bites to take pot shots at the newly confirmed Secretary of HHS. Tell me, in that chain, where are the experts? There are none. The system isn't broken. It was never designed to work. It's denied by falsehood. Justice hinged on Children's Health Defense, a small nonprofit bringing together medical records and medical experts. It's the only reason we know what really happened to those girls, and the reason that we can call out mainstream media as fear-mongering liars. They are not even curious. There are almost 1 million medical doctors in this country. We had 3 of them give expert opinion, and they independently and unanimously said that those girls did not die of measles. What is most telling is the counter argument. It doesn't exist. There are no experts who have reviewed these medical records and claimed the girls died of measles. None. And there never will be, because it would be a fabrication. You cannot read the medical record and conclude death from measles. Yet here we are with Senator Bill Cassidy, a medical doctor who should have known better, saying, quote, "There's 2 children dead in West Texas from not taking a measles vaccine." Now, the media encouraging fear to get more clicks is expected. Politicians playing politics is expected. The McCullough Foundation was not expected. They published a paper, Deaths Following MMR and MMRV Vaccination in the United States, on February 17th. It included 9 authors, 7 of whom are McCullough Foundation associated, including Peter McCullough himself. They describe 7 measles infection-associated deaths over the last 30 years, of which 2 of them were from West Texas in 2025, which we know to be false. One of them was New Mexico, which we know nothing of cause or even mechanism of death, only that they tested positive on a post-mortem. So no actually confirmed measles deaths over the last 10 years. And given how reckless that label is used, one wonders about the other 4 over the last 30 years. But it's fair to say that we are surrounded on all sides by people who want to say that those girls died of measles. And this is not a benign technicality buried under a mountain of lies. The bad practice of medicine kills a lot and should be feared. Instead of putting the spotlight on malpractice, the largest impact these girls will leave on most of us is that their deaths were contorted to misdirect fear, to feed hysteria of a virus, encouraging vaccination and vilifying those who would choose otherwise. Know that mainstream media is not the victim of misinformation. They are the perpetrators of it. For years to come, when they bring up measles, they're going to mention those 2 girls from West Texas who died of measles. One of them represents Kaylee. She did not die of measles. And the other one represents Daisy, and she did not die of measles.
Karl, thank you for doing that. I mean, it was a brilliant presentation, and it's well overdue. It's the Senator Blumenthal as well, wheeling out that sign every single time he can. It's just beyond evil. Thank you for that brilliant presentation, though. I really appreciate it. Just one quick question. I wrote it down. Was these authors, are they paid to write corrupt science, or are they? And why would you? If you're a scientist, you know right from wrong. You know, the answers are. I mean, well, I don't understand how they can come up with MMR does not cause autism ever. How do they come up with that?
Right, because that is the line that their funders need to hear. They may not be paid directly to produce any one paper, but if they started publishing papers that were critical of vaccines, they would never get a grant again. Their funding would dry up. They would ruin their careers. Honestly, if a career is built upon lies after lies, which are endangering a lot of people, it doesn't deserve to exist.
Someone's just written excellent work, Karl and Children's Health Defence team. Quite right. Yeah, disappointed in McCullough. What can we do? I mean, it's that's why people out there, you can only trust Children's Health Defence. I mean, it's very hard. We're not paid by any pharmaceutical companies or anyone like that.
I know. I don't know what to do about McCullough other than bringing it up every time. It's this is, you know, it's not the benign technicality that we would just give up on. We can never give up on correcting people when they're wrong. And I mean, I know you personally sat on the Senate floor and talked about this. You know, I just think we just need to keep the banner of truth going.
Quite right, Carl. Well, thank you so much for your work. And no, you're hugely appreciated by our viewers. I can see on social media you're getting attacked quite heavily. But welcome to getting things right. You know when you're on the right side when you get attacked as much as people love you. But I know the people in the chat are showering you with love right now. So thank you, Carl, for all you do for us. We're so grateful to you.
Well, thank you, Polly.
All right. Well, look, everyone, now we're going to the story of the day. And Mike will be with you tomorrow. We're live.
Okay.
Tell everyone your name, please.
Karen DeSalis,
Okay, so this is about your nephew
my nephew.
and your brother.
Yes,
All right. Do you want to start with your brother?
sure.
Okay. So
Oh.
tell us what happened.
What happened? He was born in October of probably 1960, and he was, a regular baby. You know, my mom never had any trouble with him. He was going through all of his milestones, as far as being able to roll over, and things like that. She took him for his shot, or his baby shots, whatever ones were due, for that young of a baby during that time. And 4 days after that, he passed away. And right after he got a shot, like the next day, he went from being able to roll over and, her being able to feed him and things like that. And the next day, he couldn't lift his head. So she took him to the hospital, and they told my mom that he was allergic to her breast milk, which we didn't find out till later. My mom never talked about it, as we were growing up. And when my niece got pregnant with her first child, my mom took her aside and told her to be careful, of the vaccines for her children. So we never really knew, but my mom knew, you know what I mean? So my brother ended up dying of encephalitis, which I didn't know until I watched the Vaxxed documentary, and I ended up getting his death certificate just so I could know for myself, like what they actually listed his death as, and it says on there, encephalitis, cause unknown. So
It's terrible.
yeah, he was only 5 months, just a little over 5 months old, when he passed away. My mom never got over it. She suffered from depression for the rest of her life after that, especially them telling her that it was her breast milk that caused it, like that was kind of blaming her,
Terrible.
Yeah, so she had to live with that forever, pretty much. So,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah.
Now your nephew.
Oh, my nephew. My nephew was also, born fine.
Where are those photographs of him?
Here.
Okay, let's show the people. You tell the story and I'll show the people the photographs.
Okay. And when he was about 7,
This is cute.
he ended up passing out, getting out of a swimming pool, and they took him to the hospital, and he ended up they didn't know what was wrong with him at the time, and it took like many doctor visits before they said that it was Kern-Sayer syndrome. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but it was at that time a rare form of muscular dystrophy, they thought, but now it's listed under the autism spectrum.
So he had vaccinations.
He did, yep, fully vaccinated, just like.
And so what are we seeing here with him in hospital?
So his muscles were slowly failing, all of his muscles in his body. He got to a point where he couldn't hold his eyelids open, and they did an eyelid surgery on him just to try to get his eyes to stay open, so he didn't, because he would have to sit and he would lean on his elbow and he would hold his eyes open. And the surgery failed. They did stitches to try to hold the eyes open, and the surgery failed, and they had to close his eyes because ultimately he had his eyes open for 3 days straight without being able to blink. So they finally cut the stitches and just let him close. And after that, I started doing research on his illness just to try to find out, but there was not a lot of information at that time. It was only being recognized as an orphan disease, which, it had no backing, because they were telling us that it was a rare form of muscular dystrophy. So I contacted the Muscular Dystrophy Association, but they didn't recognize the disease at all. So after that, his heart slowly started to enlarge, and they had to give him a pacemaker, because at first his heart could beat on its own. And as the pacemakers went along, his heart slowly got to the point where it couldn't beat on its own anymore, and it was pacemaker dependent. And he had a lot of different problems after that. He didn't grow, his stature was very small. So even when he was in high school, he was really like probably a 10-year-old kid, like he never grew anymore. So he went to school just like regular, but even the schools back then didn't recognize him as that he needed extra help, so he just went to regular classes and things like that. And it wasn't until I brought it to the attention of the school that ultimately that disease causes him, it will make him go blind, and in the end, that luckily never happened to him, but he passed away right before he turned 16 years old.
16?
Yeah.
And what was the actual cause of death?
It was heart failure, or congestive heart failure.
And you and the family believe this was vaccine caused?
Yeah, now. Mm-hmm. Because now there was no other cause for it. With the they said that it was a genetic disorder, or one of the doctors said just a bad egg. And how do you say that? That it's just a bad egg. So.
These doctors are so callous.
Yeah, and they will never tell you that vaccines are a possibility. You know what I mean? They'll never even admit it at all. And I remember once being in the hospital and hearing the doctors talking, and I could hear them saying, and I don't remember verbatim what they said anymore, or what they were talking about, because it's been so long since 1997. But I went into the room and I was like, what did you just say? What was it that you were just talking about? And they were talking amongst themselves, and they made me leave the room. So I knew then, that there was something that they weren't telling us, and I never did, they never did tell us. And they had my sister sign a do not resuscitate order for him. So, I finally did enough research that the University of San Diego was doing research at the time. And when I took him there, because he used to fall asleep, and he would fall asleep and he would sleep for probably 8 weeks at a time, to the point where they had to put in a feeding tube, because he couldn't eat on his own, especially while he was sleeping, But mentally, he was normal. When he would wake up, he would talk, and, he asked me many times why this was happening to him, and I never could answer, But one of the times that he was sleeping, I took him down to the University of San Diego, and they took him in through the emergency portion of the hospital there, and his temperature was 72 degrees, his body temperature. And they said that he had the temperature of a dead person, is what they did. And they took him into the hospital. They put him under a lot of just heating blankets and heat lamps, and they never treated him with any medications of any kind. It was carnitine, it was potassium, it was coenzyme Q for his heart, just things to build up his strength. And when they had him on the heating blankets, he actually woke up, which was, they had him in the heating
blankets. He had a rough life.
He really did, for the time he was diagnosed when he was 10, and he passed away right before he turned 16. So, and it was during me watching your Vaxxed video that I realized what had actually happened, So.
I'm really sorry. Is there anything else you want to add to this story?
No.
Thank you.
Just that people should be made aware.
That's right.
Yeah.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.